Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the BFG podcast. Full disclosure, this is the fourth episode that we've recorded, but it'll probably only be the second episode that's going up. We've been dealing with some technical issues. The second episode we recorded had audio problems. The third episode had video problems and then just stopped recording about halfway through. So we are finally getting to the point where our setup is all ironed out, and we think we're somewhat confident that we're ready to actually record
testing things
in earnest.
Before recording.
Yeah. So we had focused in week 2 on David Lowery and his filmography. As far as we focused on The Green Knight, but then went back and did a retrospective on his films. We also, the week after that, did Darren Aronofsky and did a retrospective on his filmography and our favorite films by him. Both of those episodes we're planning on reworking and re-recording at some point down the road, but we didn't want to do it we didn't want to do it without feeling into it. We wanted to wait until it seemed fresh for us again. We didn't want to record it and then immediately record it again that day or the next week when we were just kind of phoning it in.
Yeah.
So we were waiting until we could kind of come at it with a fresh set of eyes and maybe even go back and look at our scores, make sure we still agreed with what we had said originally. But this week we're back, and hopefully the setup is running the way it should, and we'll be able to actually keep uploading the way we want to.
Yeah.
So this week what we've got, we had talked about a system where each week I'll ask Garrett a question, and we'll kind of go through that as an opening segment before we get into the main portion of the podcast.
Yeah.
And so about partway through the week, I asked Garrett what his top 10 film scores would be. We excluded musicals kind of because of the inherent differences between musicals as their own score and actual film scores. But we didn't exclude scores that include eclectic soundtracks. So movies like The Greatest Showman.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, Scott Pilgrim is fine. A lot of Tarantino's movies are fine, things like that. But we didn't include The Greatest Showman, South Pacific, stuff like that because of the inherent differences.
Yeah.
But anything that has an eclectic soundtrack as its score is fine, just not an actual musical. So would you like to start, or would you like me to start on our segment of our top 10 film scores?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Did you want to just kind of blow through them really fast, or
we can talk about them a little bit? I figured we'd start at our number 10s and just kind of talk about, if there's a reason that it impacted us or a reason why we think it deserves a spot.
Yeah. Okay. So my number 10 is The Witch, and I think this is the one that I kind of gave away to you.
Yeah.
When we were talking about it. But yeah, I really love this score. Really beautiful, but hauntingly beautiful in a way. It's got a lot of vocal yodeling in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of in the background. That adds to that kind of witchy mystique and all that to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of terrifying, but works so well for the film, and I love it.
Okay.
So do you want to do yours, or do you want me to keep going?
No, I'll do mine. My number 10, I kind of gave away to you. Not the actual score, but I did tell you about partway through the week that I was going to include one John Williams score. Just kind of my personal favorite. If nothing else, just kind of as a tribute to the impact he's had on film. I know we've talked before about how sometimes his scores can sound a little bit generic over time.
Yeah.
He's become such a big part of popular action movies and just popular film in general that you've heard a couple of his scores and you've heard pretty much what he has to offer. But I included kind of my representative John Williams score that I felt was the best of what he had to offer.
Yeah.
So what I went with was the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because that's the one that personally, pretty much any of his soundtracks, you can hear it and you can immediately identify what movie that is.
Yeah.
Because it's become such a staple of pop culture.
Yeah.
But Raiders of the Lost Ark is my personal favorite. Some of my favorite, kind of Spielberg and George Lucas storytelling, but also just one of my favorite scores.
Yeah.
I just really like the sound of it. So
That's
number
really
10,
good, yeah.
Number 10 is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I get that. I've never been a huge Indiana Jones fan.
Okay.
Honestly, my dad loves them, and I've seen them a million times. But it's just
Yeah. No, I love the Indiana Jones films.
you would.
Okay.
My number 9
Yes.
is Romeo and Juliet, the 1996 version.
Okay. Yeah. Like the weird one with DiCaprio.
Yeah, the shooty one. That's what my girlfriend calls it. She does not like that one, but I like it. And I think it's like the music is kind of edgy, but it fits super well for like the story it's telling, just a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet. And there's something about this movie just gets me with like how the dialogue flows, even with the modern backdrop and not like, you know, in the Renaissance time like it is set. And I love that, and I think the score complements it really well with the diegetic and like, you know, normal score music.
Yeah. No, and I get that. And I think Baz Luhrmann did a similar thing like years later with The Great Gatsby, where he took kind of like...
That did not work as well.
Yeah, he took like classic literature and tried to... I don't know if modernize it is the right word, but he tried to take a very eclectic sound and musical style and put it with like this classic literature, which works to a lesser extent. And then even more so with Moulin Rouge, which kind of just delves into like actual musical territory instead of like just an eclectic soundtrack. So that's kind of his niche. But yeah, I think Romeo plus Juliet was where it was kind of done most effectively.
Yeah, I'd have to agree for sure. All right,
so
you want to go to your 9?
Yeah. My number 9 is, again, kind of a representative. I tried to not just take one director and put a bunch of his movies, or one composer and put a bunch of his movies. I tried to kind of pick like a representative so that I could be more eclectic myself. But my number 9 is Django Unchained.
Oh, that's a good one.
I went because Tarantino is, again, kind of renowned for the way he takes these eclectic songs from various styles and various movies and various artists and adds them to enhance to his movies. And it took me a long time to decide between Django Unchained, Hateful Eight, Kill Bill, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those are all just kind of on my like standard listening rotation. But eventually Django Unchained won out for me a little bit because not just because I like a lot of the music on it, but because I wanted to pick like a representative Ennio Morricone soundtrack.
Yeah,
and
that's before he actually got Ennio to like compose his music. He just kind of like bought the rights for that, right?
Yeah, because Ennio Morricone is one of the most renowned like Western film score artists. Or composers ever, you know, and he did all like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, like all of the Clint Eastwood like spaghetti westerns and stuff like that. And I at first I had a couple of his on there that I was trying to decide like which one should I put on here because I wanted his music in it. And eventually I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna make Django Unchained kind of like a representative Tarantino score, but also a representative like a Ennio Morricone score, because it does so well at blending both of those, and it's got some of his best music, some of Morricone's best music already mixed into this eclectic soundtrack. So I went with that one as a representative for kind of both artists.
That's really good. I love that. Actually, I forgot to mention, I don't know if we should mention later that we have honorable mentions, but I have one of his in my honorable mentions. So that's cool. Well, for right now, I'll go to my number 8, which is The End of Evangelion. Which is
really?
Yeah, I love the music in this. I think the music, even the normal like, you know, music made for the film swells so well with the giant robot fights and all that. But even like when they want to incorporate not just like in the movie but also in the show actual songs like Fly Me to the Moon and such, like it works so well for what they're trying to represent, like when making it. Like Hideaki Anno, I think is his name. He really like dude knows where to put his music and like how to put it in there. And he freaking nailed it with this. Like the music is beautiful, even for such a brutal movie that is like not fun to watch, I guess. Per se, but it's done so well, and I love it.
That was your number...
My number 8.
Okay. My number 8 is Baby Driver.
Oh, nice.
So I've been kind of showering my honorable mentions into, like, as I've been talking about movies, I kind of was talking about how, you know, shout outs to Morricone and shout outs to Tarantino and stuff. But I guess the honorable mention here is for Edgar Wright's other scores, because he kind of does a similar thing to a lesser extent in a lot of his movies. Baby Driver is probably his most varied and eclectic, I would think. But the music in Baby Driver, just not only is it like catchy music, and a lot of it is just like really good like earworms, but it does so much to just enhance the style of the movie. He went into Baby Driver. His idea for Baby Driver was that he wanted a film score that he could have car chases to. He started out with the idea of like, what are the best car chase scenes? And how can I enhance that with music? And so he came out with this soundtrack to Baby Driver that was the best like car chase music, and also just a varied soundtrack that like the hero of Baby Driver would be into. And it works so well within and outside of the movie that I think it deserves its own spot.
I love that like a lot of it is diegetic in a way. Like, you know, it's Ansel Elgort just listening to it while doing the getaway driving and everything. It's so cool.
And like the film score, you know, you hear the music kind of like through his headphones. So like when you're watching it, you'll just kind of hear the music in the background because he's got like an earbud popped in or something like that. But the score, you know, obviously you don't hear it that way whenever you're listening to just the soundtrack, but it's so well integrated into the movie.
I'd have to agree. That's beautiful. I can't believe I literally thought of it and I brought it up to him before and then I forgot to put it on.
Baby Driver?
Yeah.
That was the one that you had forgotten before?
No, this is one that I'd forgotten like maybe yesterday or the day before when I was like finalizing it, I guess. It's kind of like, I don't know, I'm frustrated that but okay.
So number 7 for you.
My number 7 is a movie that I just watched recently, again, Hereditary.
Okay.
I think that soundtrack is like perfect.
Yeah.
For, you know, again, for the movie. I'm thinking a lot of it is like just how it's worked into the film itself. Like you were just talking about with Baby Driver.
Yeah.
And I think Hereditary does it really well because, you know, it's a droning, terrifying sounding, a lot of like, I don't know if you call them synths, but like whatever they are, they drone very low and heavy in the background. And for the subject matter, it works so well, and it puts you into that like creepy atmosphere and mood the entire time. It's absolutely amazing. It works perfectly.
I want to talk about a little bit more later, but just a quick note. That's something that I noticed with a little bit in the old Candyman, but this new Candyman, the way they have like the buzzing of bees in the background, like as part of the score and just as part of like this like overwhelming noise around you, like surrounding you, is just so effective. But we'll get to that later. My number 7, and this is the one that I remembered like a couple days ago, and I was like, oh shoot, I need to add this real quick. And because I guess I should mention, originally my number 10 was going to be the Back to the Future soundtrack by Alan Silvestri. And various artists. Huey Lewis and the News make appearances. Johnny Be Good is a great song from it, you know, so on and so forth, by Chuck Berry. But it ended up getting bumped because I remembered a soundtrack that I had to put into the list somewhere. And it made it to my number 7. And that is Mad Max Fury Road by Tom Holkenborg, or also known as Junkie XL. But yeah, Fury Road is up there. Not just, I mean, I love that movie. I love just kind of the wall-to-wall action and the way it's done. But again, almost like with Baby Driver, where some of the music is like integrated into the movie itself. I don't remember, I'm not blanking on his name off the top of my head, but there's a name for like the guy in like the red long johns who's like playing the electric guitar, like the flaming guitar on one of the cars. But some part of it is supposed to be like war chants and like war music as they're riding through the desert and stuff. And it's so well integrated into the movie, but outside of the movie, it's such a great, like kind of, I guess like not quite death metal, but like hard rock, like metal soundtrack. That's just like kind of like pumps you up, regardless. That one had to make the list.
That's a really good one. Man, didn't even think about that. I don't know if I've ever seen any of the Mad Max movies.
So
never had any real interest.
I think the original Mad Max is kind of the least of the series. That's one thing that's really interesting to me, is I feel like the Mad Max movies almost improve with time. The first one I'm not a huge fan of. The The second one I think is really good. Then Beyond Thunderdome was really good, but Fury Road is kind of like my...
That's like the magnum opus.
Yeah, it's the best of the Mad Max movies, but it's also just like one of my favorite movies. Like,
really?
Fury Road is just an excellent action film.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about the Halloween movies, except not action. But yeah, so I'll move on to my number 6, and this is my, I guess, Baby Driver in a way, because all the music is diegetic, or at least most of it. Waves from 2019, Trey Edward Schultz. Really beautiful soundtrack. A lot of the songs that I grew up with, like as a kid, like a lot of it comes from like that summer 2016 kind of feeling, and I would have been 17 when that time came around. You're old, and
I know.
But yeah, so I was really into all that music. And
Yeah.
It's like it was super fun to like, you know, watch this movie and have it all being placed in Florida where we're from, and hearing all this music and seeing them all like, you know, doing stuff during the summer. And it's like, whoa, that's me. I grew up like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like it's a very fun, kind of like relatable soundtrack, and also just music that I love. And yeah, I think it's beautiful, and it works. Even though it's all diegetic, it works so freaking well for everything. Like they puts you in the right mood and the right headspace. There's this point in the film where they play "I Am a God" by Kanye West.
Yeah.
And I think his name is Kelvin Harrison. He's amazing. He's an amazing actor. He needs more recognition. But yeah, it's like it's perfectly put in, and I love it. And I highly recommend that soundtrack to anyone, even if you don't like rap.
I'm not familiar with the movie. You said it's called Waves?
Yes, called
I
Waves.
just don't know that movie in general.
Yeah, it flew way under the radar in 2019 because, you know, they put like we talked about before how they put like a ton of their marketing A24
Yeah.
in like the Lighthouse and all that around that time.
Oh, okay. It was one of A24's like little.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, do you remember It Comes at Night?
Yeah.
Yeah, same guy that did It Comes at Night.
Okay.
And Krisha.
Yeah.
And all those. Yeah, Trey Edward Schultz, he's a great up and coming director. I love that guy.
Okay. All right. My number 6 is a movie that I've been recommending to you for a while. I've been trying to get you to watch. Charade.
Oh my god.
it's like a beautiful like 1960s spy thriller. Or not spy thriller, but like a kind of like a detective thriller, I guess. About them trying to, it's basically a bunch of people trying to find some money that's gone missing, and the guy they think has it has passed away, and so they start like trying to force his wife to tell them where the money is.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like she's on the run, and there's a guy that is trying to help her, but you're not really sure if he's trying to help her or if he's just trying to get the money or not. But it's got this amazing like 1960s like kind of like booming synthy, like almost like psychedelic soundtrack that adds so well to the movie, and it's just a lot of fun to listen to outside the movie. Are you familiar with Henry Mancini?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
It's done by Henry Mancini, the composer is Henry Mancini.
Wow.
And so that kind of tells you what you're in for, like what to expect. And that's one of my favorite, one of my favorite 60s soundtracks just in general. It's very well composed, but it adds to the movie so well.
Too bad the 60s suck. Okay, let's move on. No, but that does sound really nice. Like Henry Mancini is always a great composer. So my number 5 is Violent, which is my former favorite movie before Black Swan came in and destroyed it. And now it's my second favorite movie, but it's a Canadian independent film made in 2014 for like I think like $300,000 off grants, and made by a band called We Are the City. And so it's a band, so it makes sense that, you know, a band, they'd probably do pretty well with the soundtrack, right? They did amazing. They freaking knocked it out of the park. And the film is all in Norwegian if you like want to watch it. Be ready for that. But like it's a really beautiful there's kind of a pattern with me with like droning soundtracks, and this is one of those again. this music just drones.
Yeah.
But it drones in like a certain pattern and way, and it repeats it over and over throughout the entire, film, but at different different levels and different intensities depending on like what scene it's placed in.
Yeah.
And you could tell that it was made with like specific care and purpose put in like for it. The final song, called Bestefar, which means grandpa in Norwegian, if you want to know, is beautiful and like really sad when you like know the context in the film, but really heartwarming at the same time.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend just listening to the soundtrack too, like if you want. Like it's kind of Brian Eno-ish ambient music.
Yeah.
And it's done very well, and I really love it.
Okay.
Yours?
My number 5 is Black Swan.
You suck.
Sorry. It's primarily just music from Swan Lake.
Yeah. Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, but slightly either retuned or like pumped up a little bit by Clint Mansell.
It does sound like really like well defined in this, and not as muddled.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a little bit refined, and I don't know if produced is the right word, but like a little bit more emphatic and focused, I guess. By Clint Mansell, who's kind of like the frequent collaborator with Darren Aronofsky.
The only collaborator.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. I mean, if you know the music to Swan Lake, you kind of know what you're in for. It's Swan Lake.
Literally listening to it on the way here.
Yeah, it's Swan Lake, but even more kind of like swelling and I don't know that I have a lot more to say than it's based on and inspired by the ballet of Swan Lake.
Yeah. If our last episode was like salvageable and we were able to upload it, then you would totally understand what we mean talking about it, because we go way more in depth.
Yeah, in a couple months down the road, when we come back to our Aronofsky perspective, we did some deep dives into
very deep dives.
Aronofsky and especially Black Swan that hopefully we can kind of recapture with and make it feel fresh.
Yeah, I think we can, because I've forgotten most of it already. But yeah, so that's a great one. Of course, you're wrong because of the placement, but But my number 4 is this is the movie that I told you when I was like when we were standing out at work, and I was like in the middle of a sentence, I think, or maybe you were, and I was just like, oh my god, remember the soundtrack?
Yeah,
and I was like, this changes everything. This is Whiplash.
Yes.
Yeah, that one. Oh my god, like it's so jazzy, so kinetic, so it adds so much rhythm to the film. And I didn't think that I'd be like so into a jazz soundtrack as I am when I listen to the Whiplash soundtrack.
It's so good.
It's so amazing. It's like it pumps you up with energy. Like it somehow, like this really like gets the blood flowing when you're like, not only when you watch it, but just when you listen to it. It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. My number 4 is Ratatouille.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Kind of that just that wonderful, kind of like refreshing and laid back, like I want to say like kind of like French or Italian.
It's French.
Styling of, well, I'm just saying kind of like the style of music.
So the Italians don't know anything, Tyler.
But that kind of like that laid back French feeling is just so well captured by Giacchino, who again I kind of had an honorable mention just for Giacchino and his work. Yeah. Whether it be with Pixar, like with The Incredibles, or even outside of that, he did the music for like the newer Mission Impossible movies and stuff like that. He's just a very talented composer, but I think Ratatouille is like one of his like very representative movies. And to go along with that, I guess there should be an honorable mention for some other movies that just have those beautiful like French soundtracks, like Amélie or A Simple Favor. I think did it really well. But I think kind of that representative styling for me is Ratatouille. Nothing really beats that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a beautiful one, and I have to agree. My jacket's gone. Okay. La Festine in that soundtrack.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful song. I have that on my like regular playlist. And I just listen to it.
Oh yeah.
That's how French I get sometimes. But okay. So I wanted to look up the composer for this because I realized that I have been forgetting to be like, oh yeah, by this composer the entire time. Oh my god, of course it's the one with like the hardest name. So my number 3, it's number 3, right? Yeah, number 3 is Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I was talking to you about this. I watched the film like for the first time. I already knew about the soundtrack. So I had heard about it from like Red Letter Media videos, and like I really loved the soundtrack like already listening to it. And I watched the film and I was like, man, this fits perfect. Like this is beautiful. Done by Wojciech Kilar.
Okay.
No idea. But he did an amazing job. Dracula's theme in this with that like that swelling kind of like emphatic like kind of a heartbeat when it comes in.
So after you mentioned it to me, when you said we were watching it for the soundtrack, I went and I didn't watch it, but I was just like listening to a few of the songs from the score, and it kind of gets your blood pumping a little bit. It's kind of like chaotic and like prickles the back of your neck a little bit. And that's even without the visuals to go with it. It's just a very evocative sound.
And when you do add those visuals, because like it has a lot of shocking visuals, the film, and like with the Dracula's wives and all that, so weird, kind of terrifying, and the music just like adds to it so well. There's one scene in particular that I'm thinking of, but I don't really know how to describe it. There's an orgy in it. But yeah, like very, very well done, very beautifully haunting in a way, and yeah, beautiful. I really recommend it.
All right, my number 3, we're going back to Westerns, not Morricone this time, but Elmer Bernstein with The Magnificent Seven.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, which I think, again, just as far as kind of like representative Western themes go, this could be argued, I guess, a little bit. You know, this is such a subjective list, obviously.
Yeah.
But for me, The Magnificent Seven is one of those just iconic themes, not just the theme, but just all of the music. Like if I hear it, I can pretty much identify it as, okay, this is The Magnificent Seven. It's got such kind of a little bit more of like a bouncy, like exciting, like Western feel to it than a lot of other Westerns that I'm used to. But it's just so well done.
Yeah. I've never been like a big Western person, but I can say that the music is like insane. Like the themes are always so distinct and so like, you know, just like true to the characters somehow. Like which I find so difficult to be able to do. To like, you know, describe a person through music is a very interesting, like, you know, concept, but the composers do it so well. It's really impressive. My number 2 is a great one that I'm hoping that you didn't think of, and you're gonna be like, oh, when I say it.
Okay.
My number 2 is Under the Skin.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think of that one.
Okay, well, I was hoping that you go like, oh, well, you know, it's
fun. No, I mean it's a great soundtrack, but I hadn't thought to include it on mine.
Okay, so I guess he doesn't want to say it all.
Oh.
So yeah, like it's done by Micah Levy. Micah Levy, Levi, I'm not entirely sure. But really, like, you know, it's so weird. It's so weird, but the film itself is so weird. Yeah. So it makes sense. And like having, you know, that kind of like weird I don't know, I guess here we go again, droning sound.
Yeah.
Put into it. Like it's alien. It's alien, and that if you know the film, it makes so much sense for it to sound so weird and so alien. Right? Like it's perfect, and I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah. No, okay, so my number 2 is Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically the first one.
Yes.
So as they moved on, I think the honorable mention here is for Hans Zimmer, who gave it. So as they went in, once you got to Dead Man's Chest and beyond, Jack Sparrow had kind of a very signature, like bouncy, almost like lilting sounds to his theme that wasn't quite perfected in the first one, but the first one has that iconic like Pirates of the Caribbean theme, and all of the music just feels so thematic. Yeah. It's all very immersive, and it's amazing to listen to outside of the movie, but it's also, you know, like perfect within this idea of like this like pirate culture. Yeah. And that was done by Klaus Badelt before Hans Zimmer stepped in for the bigger installments. And I think he kind of perfected the sound of the first movie, where Hans Zimmer kind of streamlined it a little bit and gave it more of like, they both have kind of that like pounding drum sound. Yeah. But the first one felt very pirate, and the second one just felt a little bit more
Caribbean.
Yeah. As they went on, they felt more, you know, like big budget movie sound, but well, like with some
like a Transformer soundtrack.
Yeah, kind of. But yeah, so special, like kind of an honorable mention to the way that Hans Zimmer enhanced some of the themes, but I think Klaus Badelt did the first movie better than any of the other movies captured that like pirate feeling.
Yeah. Man, it's a beautiful score and really iconic too, like in a way. Yeah. I think a lot of people do like credit it towards Hans Zimmer too. Yeah. More than Klaus Badelt, is that what you said?
Yeah, Klaus Badelt.
Klaus Badelt, yeah. Because, you know, I hadn't heard of the guy until you brought him up when talking about the soundtrack before. Yeah. So, you know, there you go. But like he did an amazing job with it. I really do think.
And I'm not sure, I don't know what else he's done outside of Pirates, but he just did The Curse of the Black Pearl before he got replaced with Hans Zimmer for Dead Man's Chest. So I don't know, I don't even know what else he's done as far as composing, but I really liked what he did with Pirates.
Yeah, I'm sure he's getting like plenty of work outside of just like movie composing, because like he's got a ton of talent. Yeah, like it's a beautiful score.
But anyway, so we were talking about our honorable mentions. So for as far as honorable mentions, I kind of mixed them in. Do you want me to go ahead and just kind of mention a few? Yeah. So for me, the big ones, like I said, some of Tarantino's soundtracks, like I love Kill Bill, Hateful Eight, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, especially, I don't know if it was already a pre-done rendition or if it was something that was recorded for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I know most of his are just from other CDs somewhere, but the rendition that they use of California Dreamin' in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is just fantastic. Edgar Wright's soundtracks are really good, especially Scott Pilgrim, which almost beat Baby Driver, but for me, Baby Driver was just a little bit more on the nose. But like Scott Pilgrim, Shaun of the Dead, excellent soundtracks. Henry Mancini, a lot of his work is really excellent. As far as Michael Giacchino, like The Incredibles was the other one I was considering besides Ratatouille. Yeah. Morricone, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, things like that.
Do you have anything from like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross in there at all?
I do not.
Ooh, that would have been.
No, I did not. But yeah, so those, like I said, a lot of them have kind of been mentioned already, but those are kind of like my honorable mentions. It's just mostly other scores by people that I was talking about before. Yeah.
Okay, so I got a lot, but I'm only gonna mention like a few standout ones that I thought might be kind of fun. So one is Boogie Nights. Okay. Love the kind of like jazzy, like fun feel of Boogie Nights. It's like it really puts you in that era and that kind of like, you know, porn star mentality, I guess. I don't know. It's like it does the like the stereotypical like porn star music so well. Yeah. But it makes it fun, and I love that. Another one being Matilda. Love Matilda. Matilda is one of my favorite movies of all time. I can watch Matilda any day. And I freaking love that like fun kind of like upbeat soundtrack. And even when they do get to like the more kind of like kiddish scary moments, it you know complements it very well with that kind of like it's a little typical, but like it's still fun, like the little horror themes that they put in there. Schindler's List, Goodfellas, Amadeus is beautiful. A lot of Mozart in that, a lot of Sirianni, I think is what his name was. Requiem for a Dream, I didn't put that in for a reason that will come up at number 1. Good time, beautiful score. I love that.
Yeah.
Shape of Water, Ghost Story, Hateful Eight, Mommy, amazing. French Canadian film. I recommend that.
Yeah.
Xavier Dolan. Baby Driver, Home Alone, The Fountain, and Scott Pilgrim. There we go. I went through all of them. I know I said I'd only do a few, but I went through all of them.
All right. So now that we've gotten through our honorable mentions, what is your number 1 top movie score?
So my number 1 top movie score is Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty excellent. I like the way the music makes the robots look bigger and more cool.
Yeah, I love the time. Like, I love the moment when they have like that musical score coming up when the giant robot is on that like tower or pyramid thing, and its balls are dangling in front of John Turturro's face. I thought that was like really well done.
How long are we gonna play out this gag?
Okay, I'll under it. My number 1 is obviously Black Swan.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that soundtrack. Love the film. I think it's perfect. Everything about it. Tchaikovsky makes perfect composition for the Swan Lake ballet, and then Quentin Mansell goes in kind of hits it with a bit of a he goes and just kind of chef kisses his own little touch onto it.
Yeah.
The little moments of his own original score that he puts in are so well put in for the mood that it's trying to get captured, that kind of seductive but intense mood that it does. It's beautiful and it's perfect. That's how I described every single one of these scores, but this one I really mean it.
Okay, so my number 1, as far as just perfect scores go, goes to The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, and, that's good.
I guess most of them are interchangeable. The themes and everything are go across the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But I went ahead and just said The Fellowship of the Ring, but that's a little bit interchangeable.
I think you could put all of them in there.
Yeah.
I kind of count them all as one movie.
Yeah. So I guess just The Lord of the Rings in general by Howard Shore. Mm-hmm. But just as far as evocative scores with very strong themes, I think it doesn't really get much better than kind of that calm soothing of the Hobbit's theme,
being in the Shire.
But it's kind of comes back to that idea of when you're in elementary school and the music teacher tries to teach you about Peter and the Wolf, mm-hmm. and how each character has their own specific theme. Mm-hmm. It's like that, but done to perfection with each of these different groups of characters from the Lord of the Rings. It's you have your very iconic themes for all these different groups of people, and they all go so well, and they're all integrated and mixed so well throughout the movie. It doesn't get much better for me than the Lord of the Rings music.
That kind of terrifying dun 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 whenever the armies of Isengard and Mordor are marching. Oh my god. Mm-hmm. Oh my god, when I was a kid, that would have me shaking my little boots.
Yeah, that
was terrifying, but it was so perfect.
Yep. Yeah, so that was our top 10 film score soundtracks.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Very different, even considering the one or two that overlapped. That that's kind of a point of contention with the two of us. We kind of see our scores and our music a little bit differently in movies. Mm-hmm. And that's become abundantly clear as we've done this.
Yeah.
Just how differently we view, especially the scores, whenever we're going through movies. Mm-hmm. But
we kept this way more secretive when talking about it, because we knew this was gonna be way different, our different lists.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to be different, to add a little bit more flavor to it. Mm-hmm. And I think it turned out really well. It was a good idea. It was a very good idea.
So what I wanted to do, keeping in theming with this, my question for you for next week is, what are your top 10 musicals? Which I know you didn't have a whole lot of soundtrack for a while, or a whole lot of experience for a while, but especially since you've been dating your current girlfriend, you've gotten a lot more into musicals and things like that. Mm-hmm. So with that kind of fresh introspective into the musical world, what would your top 10 musical soundtracks be? So that'll be next week's questions.
Work to do. We are going to be watching a lot of musicals over the next week.
So this will be really good for Greer too.
Yeah. This is going to be like a bonding experience even more.
Yeah. So with that said, we'll move into the Candyman, which we went and we watched the original, and we also watched the one that just came out about a week ago. And before we get into the movies, I need to go ahead and explain. This was something that I had explained, I believe, in the second episode, which ended up not being salvageable because of the audio. But we've devised an entire rating guide for our films. It's based on 10 categories, and we call it the WAP Master. W stands for writing, H is for heart, A is for acting, P is production design, M is marketing, A is audio, S is shooting, which is like cinematography, D is directing, E is editing, and R is reflection. You can give 1 to 10 points in each of those categories for a grand total of up to 100 points, or as low as 10 points if you give everything a 1, if we find a movie that terrible.
We might.
And this is something that we've been doing for the last few weeks, that we tried to introduce.
We're very familiar with this already.
Yeah, we tried to introduce this a couple weeks ago, and this is like our 5th or 6th WAP Master that we've done. But this will be the first one that we're presenting to you because of the kind of production troubles that we've had getting to this point in the podcast. So to start off with Candyman, we'll do the 1992 Candyman first. And for the first category, we have W, which is writing. That says, is the film well written, clever, and cohesive? Are there plot holes, cringeworthy dialogue, or unmotivated moments just to squeeze in a gag or a sexual encounter? For that, I gave it a 7. I feel like it was fairly well written, but I feel like it wasn't even that there were moments that were, it didn't feel unmotivated, but it also didn't quite feel cohesive to me. It felt like a movie that rewards like your own interpretation and multiple viewings. Yeah. Because your first time through it, there are times where somebody says something or something happens and you're just like, wait, but like why? You know? Yeah. You kind of have to. Some of it is left up to you, which I think can be good up to a point, but I think it was to the detriment of the movie a little bit sometimes. So I gave it a 7, but that's, you know, I feel like for what the original movie gave us, that's pretty respectable.
I did not like the writing in this very much. Okay. I thought that the writing was maybe like of the core, like, you know, important details in the film, the writing was maybe the worst part. Okay. It felt like a lot of the dialogue was kind of like shoehorned and cliche, and I feel like that kind of took away from some of the performances too, and that didn't make me very happy with it. Yeah.
But I think I was a little bit more forgiving of it too, given the context that this movie is like 30 years old now. For its time, I think that the dialogue was at least more mature and more developed in like its world building and stuff than its contemporaries, as far as like the 90s, like Halloween and Friday the 13th movies and stuff.
Yeah. Well, sure, when you compare it to those, but like when you have like a moment, like when they're at dinner with you know, Trevor and his like professor friend. Yeah. And he's like, did you forget that he's British? I can't do a British accent. He's like, did you it came out as like
Boston almost.
Yeah, that was weird. I was not thinking like Italian, but it was, he kind of like, he went into like a weird kind of diatribe where he's like, did you forget that I wrote this paper like 10 years ago? And he like gives out like all the backstory to Candyman. It's like, why is this how we find out? Like this felt kind of like lazy in a way.
No, there are some like exposition dumps that feel a little unnecessary.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I gave that a 5. Okay. Because it's like it's passable. You know, it's like it does its job, but I feel like it doesn't exactly take away, but there's more. I want to like say things that like might hint towards like what I think of other parts of the WAP Master, and that's even though over the past couple episodes that we haven't been able to put up, I've been like really trying to like not do that.
Focus in on the one specific category.
But it doesn't exactly take away, but it doesn't give much either. So except for maybe like in the screenplay, I think screenplay wise it's fine, but like script wise, it's, you know, it could use work.
Yeah. All right. So for H we have heart. that says, some movies revel in their own bad intent. We watch movies with heart to make us feel things. Does the movie compel us, inspire us, or make us think? Do we learn or grow from it, or is it forgettable and or too despicable for its own good? This one, I went right down the middle of the road. I gave it a 5. I think that sometimes it had good intentions. And I think that for its time, for a movie in the 90s, it did have a message and something to say about gentrification and political viewpoints. But I also think that by the end, the ending twist kind of ruined that a little bit for me by falling back into the trap of its own, like wanting to be just a horror movie.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give anything away, even though it's a 30-year-old movie. But I think some of the goodwill and the heart that it had built up for me, it kind of lost in the last few minutes. But I just kind of went middle of the road with that. I gave it a 5.
This is again kind of an opposite feeling that we had. I give it an 8.
Okay.
Because I feel like the heart in like the writing, I'm not like fully into. It feels like in that aspect that it could, do better. I think that they're handled okay, but they could do a little better. But where the heart comes in for me is seeing how much like obvious love and appreciation for the craft is put into the filmmaking of this movie. Like, you could tell the director, let me find his name. I have the IMDb up right now.
Well, and this is interesting because whenever I was looking at the movie, I noticed that this is one of the biggest things that he's done.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily like a big director. In a lot of his movies I hadn't even heard of.
Yeah.
The 1992 Candyman, which was kind of not a huge movie on its own. It was kind of like a cult classic.
Yeah.
This was kind of like his claim to fame.
Yeah, and I think like he clearly loved what he was doing, and like really, like, for someone that hasn't had like a very huge career, he's clearly like put a lot of effort into the things that he has made, and you can tell in here he directed the hell out of this thing. I guess we'll get to that when we get to directing.
Yeah, no, I had a lot to say about the directing and, well...
Hold on, he's holding the baby right now. Let me switch to this thing. Yeah, his baby cam.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to stand back there and like miss all the dialogue because I need to be sitting close to the mic. I think there's a lot to say about like the directing and the cinematography, but yeah, he definitely had a passion for what he was doing.
Yeah, and you can feel that.
Yeah.
In like most of the technical aspects of this film, like it really like feels like he cared a lot.
Yeah,
and I love that. But yeah, so I gave that an 8.
Okay. So next is A for acting. This category covers the obvious performances by at least the primary cast members. This one I gave a 7. If I was just judging on the is it Virginia Madsen?
It's Virginia Madsen, yeah.
It probably would have gotten higher, but even her surrounding cast of like kind of primary members brought it down a little bit for me. I feel like the one that played her husband, he was not a great actor.
Nah.
As well as his mistress, the one that he's supposed to be cheating on Virginia Madsen with. She was such a stereotypical, like, what do you care if I'm cheating on you? You know, like, it was so obvious that was who she was supposed to be, and that was her entire character. There was no depth to it. Yeah. She was just there to make a plot point. Yeah. And then they had like the kind of the obvious, like the stereotypical moment where after she finds out and leaves him, he immediately starts regretting it because she starts getting annoyed at him for every little thing. And she was there as a plot point. She had no depth as a character, and the acting was kind of rotten to go along with it. So, like, I think if I could have just judged it on Virginia Madsen and Tony Todd, it would have gotten a little bit higher.
Oh my god.
But even her surrounding, like, primary and supporting cast were not that good.
Yeah. So Virginia Madsen, I thought that she I think she's a good actress, and she could do really well in a lot of roles. But I think this kind of goes with the script. Really let her down in a way where like a lot of her dialogue did feel kind of cliche.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that very much. But I think that she did really well with like what she was given, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Tony Todd freaking steals the show. He's amazing in this. I love Tony Todd. His voice is like breathtaking.
Yeah.
When he like, oh my god, he's so terrifying, but he's still filled with so much like sorrow and like almost like regret in a way. And like it's man, the guy can portray so much in such like a small sample size. But I thought Trevor, I thought he did not do very good at all. I think maybe his best moment was the moment when he was crying on the toilet, but then once he got up, I mean, like, come on.
Yeah. No, I agree, but also it's just a funny way to phrase it. You know, it's not his best acting moment was the moment where he cried on the toilet. It's not the review you want to get for your acting abilities.
But I thought that like that moment was kind of ruined though once he stood up and he like still was looking in the mirror. Kind of spoiler alert, I guess. After Virginia Madsen died, and he's like, Helen, Helen just says her name 5 times in the mirror, and it's so stupid. I guess. I was like, what are you doing? But yeah, like I thought a lot of the supporting cast did take away. I did like Cassie Lemons as Bernadette. I think she did a good job as the supporting actress. I think she did very well for like what she was given.
Yeah.
If the script was better, I think she would have done even better. But like even still, she shines like with what she has. And but like I feel like a lot of the this is where I think a lot of the writing kind of shows its hand in how dated it is. Where like a lot of the portrayals of like and this is gonna sound kind of like cringy because it's just some like 22-year-old white dude saying this, but like I feel like a lot of the portrayals of like African Americans in this is kind of like stereotypical in a way.
Oh, it definitely is. It's I think it kind of had good intentions for its time, but it was still kind of in its infancy. Yeah. And that's something it was executed so much better in the 2021 film. You know, and we can talk about that more later. But there were like these very basic ideas where it felt like they were trying to make a social commentary, but also not offend anybody, because this was like just out of the 80s. Yeah. It came out in like 92. Yeah. So
the 80s was a tumultuous time. And this was right after the Rodney King time in LA in 91. So
it was trying to say something, but also trying to stay mainstream enough that people wouldn't be offended, that they could still make money off of it. Yeah. And it was something that was done far better in the 2021 movie. Yeah, for sure. But we'll get more into that later.
Yeah. So that's basically it. I have what did I say? Let me pull the thing back up. I gave it a 6. Yeah, that's right. So
okay.
So you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah. So for P, we have production design. Do sets and costumes fit the genre and time period? Does makeup portray the situation? Does the beaten down hero still look perfectly coiffed after lying in the dirt? For this, I also gave it a 7. I think this kind of falls into the same trap that we've talked about it before, but it hasn't made it to air before. Yeah. I think it suits itself pretty well, but also just because of the kind of just modern time period that it was set in, oftentimes there wasn't a lot to it. You know, it's like,
didn't see anything really unique.
Yeah, she's wearing jeans, she's wearing a shirt and a jacket. You know, it's like, okay. Yeah. There were a couple like really cool like practical effects and things, but the vast majority of the movie was just kind of like, well, they're dressed like people in the 90s dressed. Yeah. So I think that it was fine, it was competent, but there wasn't anything to really. There, besides like 1 or 2 moments of practical effects, there wasn't really anything to like blow you away.
Yeah, what is she doing? What is that?
She's agreeing with me.
There you go. Sorting out how necks work. Yeah, I also gave this a 7. I think it's well done for what it needs to be doing. Yeah. I really love the sets of Cabrini Green, like in the kind of like back rooms of it and everything. Like you get to like all the graffitied areas and everything. You get to the big mural of Candyman that she crawls out of. I think that looks really cool. And I like the makeup effects and all that of Virginia Madsen whenever she's like going through those rough times, and I guess rough times is like like light way to put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like she's like all kind of like roughed up and everything in the hospital and all that. I think that she looks like she's worse for wear.
Yeah.
And they do a good job with that, like kind of making you feel like how she feels. Yeah, 7, pretty good.
Yeah.
Doesn't take away anything. It adds to it a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah. For marketing, many movies give away too much or not enough in trailers, use poor music choices, or just don't do enough marketing to get people excited for the film. Were we excited to see the film, and why or why not? This one feels like a little bit of a cop-out. I gave it a 5, mostly just because when this movie came out, I was 1. And so I can't really vouch for, the hype or the excitement for this movie, but my understanding is that it was kind of more of a cult classic rather than like an immediate smash. Not to mention that the trailers kind of portray it as just, I mean, it had it kind of showed, the idea of the Candyman, but they were just trailers for another like horror thriller.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to like give it a low rating because I have no idea what it was like in the 90s waiting for this movie to come out. But I also, looking back at the trailers, it didn't make me think like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So.
Same here. Like I also gave it a 5. And not only because like, I wasn't even born when this movie came out, I wasn't thought of for like another 7 years. So, I can't really vouch for that, but when I did watch the trailers and like see the posters, I love the posters. The posters are cool.
Oh yeah.
Like the one behind us, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I was not crazy about the trailer because it's one of those trailers from the 90s that goes like Rob Schneider is
Rob Schneider is the Candyman.
Rob Schneider is a wronged African-American man trying to get vengeance on the world that wronged him.
Adam Sandler tries to help him.
And when these two get together, it's a wacky time. No, but it's like, it's one of those ones that goes like to everyone, the Candyman is a myth.
Yeah.
Except for Helen Lyle.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it is a myth to Helen Lyle in the movie until like, like later on.
That's literally the idea of the movie, is that it's a myth that she's investigating because she's a journalist.
Yeah.
Which, every 90s movie heroine was a journalist and that ran over into the 2000s. That was that was more or less what The Ring and The Grudge and stuff were too.
Yeah. They were just like, this is easy. We'll put him. How do we get him in that house? I don't know. We'll make him a journalist.
Yeah.
Give him a pen and paper and a press hat, one of those Newsies hats. And just throw him in there. That'll do it.
Yeah.
But it's it's a movie. Like it's from the 90s. It's gonna have one of those movie voice trailers. I guess like you can't expect a whole lot more. Luna, respectfully, shut up.
This is not your moment.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk about the marketing for 1992's Candyman. If you could please. I'm sorry, Luna, I don't mean it. But she's staring daggers into me right now.
Yeah, no, she knows exactly what you're saying. She doesn't appreciate it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to offend.
We haven't given her moment.
Oh, true. Do you want to say some words about the marketing of 1992 Bernard Rose's Candyman?
Did you have something to add? That's very insightful, actually.
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Very not very well put.
Yes, spot
I'm
on,
honestly impressed.
Good job.
For someone that is only a few months old, not bad.
Yeah,
not bad at all. The big yawn. Oh, that's adorable. Oh, look at that. Look at she. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting
that took it all out of her. She was really intense. She had a lot to say about the marketing, but that was basically all she had for the day.
Boy, am I tuckered out after
that.
Made me tired.
Yeah.
But yeah. So 5, it's casual, kind of like what you would expect from the era.
Yeah.
I guess you're not gonna get much more.
So A is for audio. This covers the orchestration and song choices and whether they enhance or elevate the film. This one I've kind of been raving about since I watched it, which I had seen it years ago, and I didn't remember it as well. But watching through it again, the music is just so good. I like it's kind of like this like And part of the theme is that, and one thing I really appreciated about this movie was that it didn't just feel like another like horror at the time. It has kind of like almost like a fairy tale mythology feel to it. And
a
it
little bit
has,
of whimsy.
yeah, and the soundtrack I think really enhances that. It's got this kind of like tinkly, like almost like whimsical sound in the background, rather than it just being like the standard like Friday the 13th, everybody gets slashed up kind of soundtrack. It's very much like kind of like this like tinkling piano soundtrack that kind of brings you into the almost like this fairy tale feeling, like you want to discover more about this character that's become like a fable in this community. So I gave that a 9.
We have 3 in a row where we agreed. I also gave this a 9.
Okay.
Actually 4 in a row. Like the soundtrack is beautiful. It's got like an organ, and that works so well for this.
Yeah.
Whenever you get to those like loud kind of like those aerial shots of the city, and they're driving to Cabrini Green, and it just like it's foreboding. It's super foreboding.
Yeah.
And it makes you like kind of nervous for what they're about to like wander into. It's like they have no idea, but know.
Yeah.
And like you were saying about the piano, like the shimmering kind of piano, it really like getting handsy over here, but it does really well for like what like it gives it a sorrowful feel, and I love that. I love the ending, like what should have been the ending. I don't like the ending of the film, like the actual ending where she goes and kills Trevor.
Yeah,
but I think it should have ended where Helen, spoiler alert, Helen dies and like kind of becomes one with Candyman, I guess. And it has this sorrowful piano, and it plays kind of like you feel bad for not only Helen but for Candyman as well, because you know his backstory, you know what happened to him. Yeah, and of course Tony Todd put so much character like into it, and the music just like it makes you sad. It doesn't make you scared. It makes you sad, and it does its job so perfectly in this instance. Like I really love the music, like you were saying. No, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's subversive, especially for its time.
Oh yeah,
that it treats the film and the characters the way it does.
Yeah, like even now when you get horrors, you don't expect to have like a full orchestral soundtrack, but like here, clearly Bernard Rose and his composer had like very eclectic, unique ideas for what this film wanted to be, and they wanted to be like a modern fairy tale, but like horror, and it's pulled off like so well in the soundtrack and the sound design, but also a little bit with the audio of the film in general. Some of the ADR seemed a little like out of whack, and that's kind of like what took it away from me from like giving it a 10. Yeah, because like I love the music, but the audio occasionally, some of the sound design, some of the mixing was a little weird. But overall though, like very well done. Yeah, beautiful.
So next we have the shooting, the cinematographer's job.
Pew, pew.
Is the cinematography eye-catching? What color palette do they use? And is there a reason they use it to enhance the movie? Does the camera work enhance the scenes and make them unique? This one I gave an 8 because I thought there were scenes that are so well executed. And there's a recurring shot that takes place over like kind of like a Central Park like theater, where it's like a round stage in the middle surrounded by like stadium seating on the sides, and there's like an aerial shot of that almost looks like an eye that they zoom in on when characters are walking by, when they're doing like exposition dumps, things like that, and while that tinkly music is playing in the background. It's so evocative and it's so well done there. But for every one of those shots, I feel like they're kind of like those generic like quick scary shots too. In like there are some shots where you can tell it's just made like to get across a jump scare, or something where they were having trouble getting the right angle in a small building or something like that. And so I think there's definitely a style to it and a flair that I liked, but whether it be because of the cinematographer's level of experience or because of budgetary constraints or whatever, there were also shots that I felt like kind of counterbalanced to the really cool shots.
I actually gave this one a 10 because the color palette for this one is very steely and kind of like naturalistic, cold feeling that you would generally think from like a horror film.
Yeah.
But I think that like because it has that grainy kind of handheld like a raw feeling to it, it adds so much more. I love the quick camera movements and all that.
Yeah.
Like there's this one scene in I think it was in an elevator when the camera like cuts like really quick back and like moves really quick back and forth, making you feel like you're like in the film and all that. Like I love that. I think it's so like engrossing in what you're trying to watch. And like you were saying before with the God's Eye view shots, there's one in a bathroom when Helen like I think no, she was laying on the ground. Yeah, she was laying on the ground in a pool of blood, and she gets up, and it's like the God's Eye view shot is like so insane. It's so perfect because you can see how tiny this room is.
Yeah,
and they're still able to like get the camera in there and like pull off the shot and make it look so great. And yeah, there are those moments where it's like boring, kind of like setups, and it's like a reverse shot, and all that. But I think that those shots don't really take away from it too much if there's not too many of them for me.
So there were shots, I think specifically the ones that got to me, there are shots in the apartment that feel like they were having a lot of trouble finding a good angle, like to kind of get into the living room or to get into the kitchen or something like that, where it feels like less than optimal. And there's also a scene, there's the scene in the like public bathroom that feels like really cramped. And I think part of that's on purpose, and part of that is just because they're trying to figure out how to get everybody in the shot. Yeah. But those two specifically kind of stuck out in my mind as like, I feel like this could have been done better.
Where like, I think I know what you're talking about, where the camera's like a little bit off to like a side and kind of a weird angle to see everyone unfold. Yeah, that is a little weird, but because I can like past that.
When it's just focusing on Helen, it's there, but it's not so bad. But then there's like a whole group that comes into the bathroom at the same time, and it feels like they're like kind of struggling there.
Yeah, I guess like it got a little bit too big for its bridges at times.
Yeah.
But I think even still, like even with moments like when Candyman's hook like flies through the mirror, and that's like the main jump scare I remember. And like it's like it's it's coming, you can tell. They set it up earlier. They do a lot of like Chekhov's gun kind of like thinking with this. Yeah, and it's very obvious, but like I still enjoy it. I think like when they did shoot in the apartment, like they did have those flat shots occasionally, but also they did have like moments where the camera would like pan and follow Virginia Madsen around, and it looked really nice, and you can get like more of a scope of like the size of this apartment. It felt like they were actually like in a lived-in space, more than just like in a set. And I love that a lot. That added a lot to it for me. Yeah, so I really love the shooting of this. I think like it was shot impeccably, especially for like a 90s horror movie. Yeah, like a 90s horror movie shot like this, like it's insane. Yeah, and you can tell like a lot of it was done because of budgetary constraints, with like the handheld and like all the like the one camera movement is like the how you catch everything in frame. Yeah, but I think it's done so well and it works so well, and I think a lot of that has to do with not only the cinematographer but also the direction from Bernard Rose that we'll get to.
So next is D for directing. Perhaps one of the most important elements. The director makes sure the movie comes together. Is the film effective at conveying a tone, message, and visuals that the director intended? Can you identify them by their good or bad habits when filmmaking? And for this one, I gave it a 7. Again, I feel like it kind of comes down to that same idea of like, there were certain moments that I felt like were really inspired. And then I also felt like there were moments where he was kind of like, oh yeah, this is also a horror movie. We need to do something to keep the audience involved. I feel like it really wanted to be more than the sum of its parts. And I felt like there was probably some conflict there. I don't know. I have no idea. But my thought is there was probably some conflict there between the studio and the director about what direction they should go with the film. Whether it should be like just a straight horror movie because of the slasher craze and stuff like that, or whether it needed to be a little bit more cerebral. And I think for all of its good moments, there are moments where it kind of it falls into its own traps too, of also needing to be kind of a horror shock fest on top of being kind of an interesting fairy tale story. Yeah.
I gave this one an 8. Okay. Because I think like, I think where it falters, where Bernard Rose kind of like falls a little bit, is like in the direction of the script and how like he wants this to be put forward. I think like he's really good with like setting up the blocking for the scenes and like how he wants the characters to act and move in these moments, but like when it comes to like them speaking the dialogue, it comes out really flat to me and like uninterested in a way. But like the fact that he's able to get all these like grand ideas across and like incorporate this fairy tale feel and this kind of whimsy into like a modern horror film, really like she's like slobbering everywhere right now.
She is. We got like a rabies baby right now.
Man, kids are weird. But like you get into looking at me and it looks like she wants to eat me right now. That's what it feels like.
I mean, she might. You never know. She's only a few months old. We haven't really developed her food tastes beyond formula yet.
I don't know how I feel about that. Anyways, about Bernard Rose. But I think like he does really well for a good amount of Luna, please. I really like what he's putting forward with the ideas that he has.
Yeah.
And like his inventive way of shooting, his inventive way of telling these stories, like with I think a lot of the vignettes that they use are really cool.
Yeah.
But then I also think like some of the again the dialogue and some of the editing decisions are like a little weird that I'm not like very big on.
Yeah.
So that does take away from me, but overall I think that he like shows a lot of promise in this. Like came out and it's very well done for like what he's given.
And a lot of promise that was never really followed up on. He never ended up really making a splash or a name for himself after this either.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame. I feel like in today's film industry, he would be able to.
Yeah.
'Cause you have all these people that make like these. I guess films are like a lot easier to make nowadays. But all these people that make like these low budget films, especially horror films, and like sure, like they might not do amazing, but they'll like like Candyman, where they do good. And they get like they make back their budget and more.
Yeah,
like he'd be given way more of a chance and be able to like do more with it. But because it's the early 90s, he doesn't really have that option. And that's sad. But like he has this as a legacy. I think it shows very well for a young director at the time.
Yeah. So next is E for editing. Does the movie have a visual rhythm? Does it flow well, keep the viewer engaged, and scrub bad performances? Which angles do they decide to use when cutting between cameras? This one I gave a 7 as well, mostly just because of, I think, my previous concerns about like the cinematography and the directing.
Yeah.
I think it kind of falls into that same umbrella. Yeah, you agree? I think it kind of has the same gift of having these like really. Excuse me.
You're so talkative today.
Yeah. It's got this really good gift of like, having these like really cool shots and things to work with.
Yeah.
But it's also they're having to deal with the kind of poor performances of some of the supporting cast, and they're having to deal with some of these like cramped shots and things like that. Yeah. So I think it did well with what it was given, but it wasn't as spectacular as it could have been with either a bigger budget or a better cast.
Yeah, I agree. I hope bless you. I hope you'd be watching instead of listening, because like Luna's stealing the show right now. Now she's just sitting there like a bobblehead kind of. So wacky.
Yeah, this is our best argument for watching it instead of just listening on your local podcast platform. Is the fact that, oh my goodness. Here, let me see. Maybe she wants.
We'll be back in a second.
So we were on editing.
Editing, yeah.
Had you already talked?
I had not yet.
Okay.
We're back.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're gonna cut that.
It'll be super graceful. Yeah. It'll be like the editing in Candyman, super graceful. Just kidding. I gave it a 5.
We had to take a small break to change Garrett's diaper.
Yeah, sometimes I get my diaper all messed up. Yeah. It's one of those things.
It's when you get overexcited about the film, though.
Yeah,
that's just part of the process, really.
I was thinking of Black Swan earlier. Yeah, but yeah, so I gave it a 5 because like you know, the editing didn't feel bad, but it didn't feel like super inspired either.
Yeah.
And there were moments where there'd be like a weird cut. Like one that sticks out in particular is like when they're doing that aerial kind of shot of Ellen and Bernadette driving like to Cabrini Green, and it has like all this like loud, bombastic orchestral score playing, and then it just cuts to inside the car, and the score is just like gone, and they're talking. And this is another thing, they pull off like they like just like stop the car in the middle of the road, and like it start talking, and like and for like a minute or two, and then they like start to pull off, and the music is still like there's still no music, and then it just immediately cuts back to like the aerial shot again, and the music starts up again right away. And I was like, that's a little jarring. That's a little weird. I'm not
definitely
not crazy about that. So you know, moments like that, like I didn't, you know, wasn't very fond of.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's kind of what I was thinking too. And our final letter is R for reflection. The most subjective of our categories. It's simply a gauge of how much we enjoyed the film because of or despite the rankings we gave in other categories. For this, I gave it a 7 as well. I think 7 is almost across the board on this. I think I gave like 6 or 7 sevens for this Wapmaster. But yeah, I gave it a 7 just for my overall enjoyment of the film too, because I think there was a lot there. A lot of promise and a lot to enjoy, but it was sometimes overshadowed by its issues as well.
Yeah. I also gave this a 7.
Okay.
I enjoyed it a good amount. But you know, like you were saying, there were those moments that you'd be like, oh, you know, kind of like head scratching kind of moments too. I'm gonna chill, bro. Yeah, like you know, those moments that you're like, not crazy about, but you know, like they don't take too much away from the film. So yeah, 7 feels fair. I like that. Now let's do overall scores, I guess.
Yeah, so my overall score, my final Wapmaster score for the original 1992 Candyman ended up being, are you ready?
Is it gonna be 69?
69.
Nice. Okay. Mine was a 70.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. 1 point off.
Right on the dot.
Yeah.
Too, with 7.
Which we probably should have seen coming because a lot of our scores were almost identical.
Yeah, I agree. I realized a second ago that I forgot to switch to the scene of Tyler when he was giving his full thing. Whoops.
That's okay. You can still hear me.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Yeah.
And
what score would you give it?
Sounds like a solid like 75.
Yeah. No, I think she's almost in agreement with us. She likes it a little bit better than we did.
I think she did enjoy Candyman.
Yeah.
But I guess we should move on to the new 2021 Candyman that just came out.
And I wasn't really sure what to expect going into the new Candyman. I wasn't sure whether we were getting like a brand new Candyman or if it was just going to be kind of like an indirect sequel, or like what exactly to expect going into Candyman 2021, because it's just called Candyman. It's not called, you know, one of those like kitschy like Return of Candyman or even Candyman 4 or anything like that. It's just called Candyman. So I was like, is it a remake or does it do callbacks or something like that? And I guess at the end of the day, it ended up being kind of both. It's supposed to be kind of like a reboot, like a revitalization, but it's definitely following up on the lore and the mythology that I think all 3 movies have already set up. The original trilogy set up. It's not like a new experience in any way. So for Candyman 2021, our first category is W, writing. For the writing, again, I gave it a 7, just like the previous one. I think for different reasons. This one was definitely more competently written, I think. But to go along with that, it was also much more heavy-handed on social commentary, and it felt more like a message movie to the point that it kind of broke the immersion rather than being an effective like blend in the movie. Yeah.
I somewhat agree. I gave this like a little bit higher of a score than the previous one. I gave this one a 6.
Okay.
I think it's because like the dialogue feels more natural, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they do a better job of making you understand and empathize with these characters a little bit better. Whereas like people seem kind of wooden in the original. I really love the two main characters in this. I thought that the actors did we'll get to that. But
Yeah.
like I thought that they were well written.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much the side characters. I thought that, you know, same thing with the original, where the side characters were like, you know, kind of forgettable. But I feel like here, even though they weren't amazing, they were more fun to watch and have on screen.
Yeah.
And I found that like really interesting. I thought the screenplay was not as good as the original, but I did like, but like I said, like it's not too much worse, and the dialogue is, I think, far better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, 6 feels good to me.
All right. H, Heart. I gave this a 7, which was a couple notches higher than I gave it for the 92. I think this one definitely wears its heart on its sleeve a little bit more, and definitely has something to say about our society right now. And I guess I should preface this by saying, before we recorded, we kind of talked and agreed that we weren't going to go in too much on like the political standings or like personal feelings or anything like that. We're not here to offend anyone or anything like that.
Movies, man.
Yeah, we want to talk about movies, and sometimes those come along with strong social messages.
I think most good movies do come along with strong social messages, though, and I really love that.
Yeah, and I think it's something we can approach. We can approach and talk about, but it's something that we kind of agreed we wanted to approach tactfully rather than just go in all gung-ho and hope that nobody got mad.
Yeah.
But I think this had a very strong social commentary running through it that for a long time felt really good, and then toward the end kind of took over the plot instead of still staying like a good blend.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think there is a place for that, but also I think that sometimes it does just feel heavy-handed. Which is the same problem that we had, or at least the same problem I had with the second Wonder Woman. Where, like, it starts out and you know it's a message movie, but then by the end you're just kind of like laughing at it. And you didn't do that with Candyman, not in any way, shape, or form. You're not laughing at Candyman by the end, but it does definitely kind of transcend message movie making into just pure message.
Yeah.
And so I gave that one a 7 as well.
Yeah. I gave mine the same score as I did with the original too. I gave the Heart an 8. Okay. I like the message in the new one more. Yeah. I feel like it's approached in more of an appropriate way with like a more understanding viewpoint for like the actual subject matter that it's handling than the original one was. And I think like having those fresh eyes and having like more of a like a, you know, a modern, like more politically charged plot in this did like lend well and make like, you know, the themes of it stand out more and like make more sense. And I appreciated that. I thought that like there was more meaning and feeling behind the like the message in this movie. Yeah. And it also, like, again, with the first one, how it felt like Bernard Rose was doing it because he like loved the craft of filmmaking and all that. This one is not only because it feels like the director who let me get her name up real quick, Nia DaCosta. It felt like not only because she loved the craft of it, but also because she really loved the message and like cared for like, you know, what she was trying to say with this. Yeah. And I think that she did a good job getting that across for like the most part. So like you were saying, the end, it does get like a little muddled. For me, it feels like the end, I agree with the message, but I think that like it felt like it was like really like shoehorned in at the last second. Yeah. It felt like it was kind of used as a way to like hurry up and wind like and finish out the plot. Like more than just like, you know, being, you know, like gradually brought up to it. It feels like it was kind of like just like and then this happens. Like it like jumps out at you. So yeah, but like I like again, like the heart though felt good for this one.
For acting, I gave it an 8. I think, again, the primary performances, where before it was just Virginia Madsen, I think here the primary performances were all pretty good. Both Yahya Abdul-Mateen and who was the girlfriend?
Like Tiona Paris.
Tiona Paris. I thought she was really excellent too. And even to some of the supporting cast, like
Nathan Stewart Jarrett.
Yeah. Was that the brother?
That was the brother, yeah.
The brother was really good. But I think to go along with that, there were people in this movie that I think were supposed to be kind of just like pretentious art people. And whenever you do that, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You got to take the good and the bad of that, because the pretentious art people were pretentious art people.
But they felt stereotypical.
Yeah. It didn't always work for me because of that.
Yeah.
Where I think the movie that always stands out to me as like having pretentious art people,
it's gonna be Velvet Buzzsaw, isn't it?
Yes. You knew exactly where I was going with it.
Yeah.
Is Velvet Buzzsaw, because yeah, they're pretentious art people, but also it transcends just that like pretentious art people stereotype.
Yeah.
And it becomes about like the art and the character development and stuff like that too. But anyway, I think I gave it an 8, which is a little bit higher than I gave the 1992, because I think the primary cast members all did what they were supposed to, and they did it well, but there was some supporting cast there that did not work for me.
Yeah. I gave this one, again, like also like you said, a higher ranking than the 1992 one. I gave it a 7 as opposed to a 6 from the original. Like I really love the leads, like you were just saying. The leads are amazing. I thought that they acted so naturally and like played off each other very well, and also like even the supporting characters, even if they weren't as good, they still like elevated their performances just by how good they were.
Yeah.
Like Yahya Abdul-Mateen the second.
Yes.
I forgot the second.
I did.
He's great in this. He's fantastic, and so is Tiona Paris. Both great. And then the brother Troy, Nathan Stewart Jarrett, like you were just saying, also very good, really good comedic relief and all that.
Yeah.
But where it kind of like falls apart for me is the William Burke character, the kind of like, you know, the kid that like saw Candyman and was like kind of like, you know, he like that that kind of goes into the writing a little bit, where like the writing and the side characters felt kind of lackluster. That's where like it falls a little bit for me, is characters like him, or like how they kind of skip out on the character of Candyman, because in the original Candyman felt like a much more of a presence, and Tony Todd added so much to it.
He's a presence and he's his own character. The Candyman is definitely a specific person that will show up whenever you speak his name in the mirror and stuff like that. Whereas in the new movie, Candyman is more an idea, a part of the culture instead. And he can show up in different forms, and different people can become that form depending on their actions.
Yeah, and I like how they changed it in that way to kind of show the sentiment of like, you know, different generations having their own their own version of the Candyman, like based on, you know, the experiences that they had around them, and all that, just kind of like attaching these specific people to this character that was made you know, in their community's kind of folklore in a way. And I like that sentiment, but it kind of sucks when you have someone like Tony Todd playing Candyman in the original, and then you cut to like someone who has like no dialogue and no real presence other than kind of standing in the background a lot.
Yeah.
It feels like, you know, just it takes a bit from it for me. Like I really loved Candyman in the original.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to add?
Not really. Great main cast. Pretty alright supporting cast. 7.
So for production design, I gave it. So this one was really hard for me. I gave it a 9. And I almost wanted to give it a 10, because there are practical effects in the new Candyman that are so good that they like really distressed me. I was talking after the movie, we were standing outside and we were talking. I hated this kind of transformation of the main character. It triggers all sorts of like trypophobia problems and things like that. The way that they did the practical effects in this movie were so good.
Yeah.
But also, with that said, there were some really not good CGI effects, which might be a little bit of a stretch for the production design category. But as far as the categories we have, I feel like production design is where you would put kind of like their CGI prowess as opposed to their like practical effect prowess.
Yeah.
And while I really liked the practical things that they were doing with the movie, so I did not like, I guess spoiler alert here, I really did not like the deep fake of Tony Todd at the end.
Yeah.
That felt like a silly cop-out. I would have liked it if they had kept it as the character.
As Yaga.
Yeah. I did not like how in the original Tony Todd was very much a character that would show up. And in here, for a lot of the scenes where Candyman showed up, he was kind of like a faceless specter. They would not show him from like the chest up. All you would see were like feet or legs or something like that. And they floated. He was not walking around. He was like an actual like specter floating around, exacting vengeance.
That like took him a bit out of like the actual like story or like and stuff like that. It made him feel too fairy tale.
There were a couple of moments where we were just like laughing in the back. And I kind of felt weird about it because you could tell there were a lot of people like into the movie and like, oh my gosh, and you and I were in the back like cracking up instead. But I think I did not like that he floated. That seemed weird to me. I didn't like that they kept shying away from showing his face because the face of Tony Todd was such a strong connection in the original. And I didn't like the CGI moments that were in there and kind of like the deep fake technology that was in there. But that was all that bumped it down to a 9 for me. I think the practical stuff they did was so good, but they kind of fumbled the CGI.
I'm a huge sucker for practical effects, especially in like today's like modern movies now, because it feels like they're used so sparingly.
Yeah, because CGI is such an easy thing to integrate, and it's done all the time, especially with like our modern, you know, all of our big blockbusters are movies like the superhero movies, like Marvel movies, DC movies, even movies like Free Guy and stuff, where CGI is such an integral part of the experience that practical effects are kind of becoming a special art now.
Damn it, George Lucas. This guy always coming in and ruining everything. But yeah, like I'm a huge sucker for that. And so when they did have like the practical effects in there, like the spoiler alert again, is the hand being cut off, or you know, like the trypophobia stuff with like all the like kind of honeycomb-esque look on him. Really, really well done.
And
I
really
love
upsetting.
that. Yeah, and really upsetting. Like the hand, like how you can see like the progression of like his arm. And how like much worse it gets throughout the film. Disgusting. And but like it works so good. But then you have the CGI moments like with the when Candyman cuts the screen and it like flaps down. That looked so bad.
Yeah, there's a moment where he cuts he's supposed to like cut a projector screen with his hook, and the physics and just the look of it are so bad. It doesn't even, it's not even like the physics of it where like the screen falls, but the actual look of the screen changes. It goes from looking like a projector screen to almost looking like a PS2 graphic.
Like a Arma cinematic or something.
Yeah, it was not good. But kind of inexplicably not good either, because
it came out of nowhere.
It wasn't even like a necessary CGI effect.
Yeah, but then you have like this like actually like, and right afterwards you have this or was this like right before when Jarek had died, and you have this like really detailed like gory, gross looking like throat slash, but it looks so good for like what they're trying to do. So that like having those two juxtaposed against each other, really weird. But like then like, you know, you have the CGBs and they looked all right sometimes, but then sometimes they didn't look too good. You know, moments like that. The production design. I don't think I told you. I give it an 8. really, I thought like setting it in the art world is a really good idea because you get like the more like interesting backgrounds and all that. The city feels like more of a character in this.
Yeah.
Because like you get scenes of Yaya walking around outside and like actually like exploring the city, trying to go to Cabrini Green and all that. Like
Cabrini Green is so much more significant. Where in the original it was like they would talk about it, but then when they got there they would show like one specific building. And it was about like the building where she found like the motif of Candyman and stuff. And here Cabrini Green was a focal point of like the plot. And I felt like it was really cool the way they approached it too, with it kind of being its own offshoot, like kind of fenced off, and he would go into like almost like this ghost town of Cabrini Green and stuff. And it was really well done, which I think is also kind of just a part of where we're at now as opposed to the 90s. Because again, I'm not trying to make any sort of like political statement or anything here. But my understanding is that when they were filming the 1992 Candyman, they were filming on location in kind of like in like a low profit ghetto kind of area. And they had to kind of like be careful because there were times where they would get sketched out and would just leave the area for a while, and then come back and film when they felt safe. And that was something that, you know, we don't really isn't approached the same way anymore.
No.
And I felt like it was very much front and center in this movie, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah. Even if like the you don't that whole added element in the original with like, you know, them actually filming on location, all that, and having these like real experiences, with you know, the area felt very like, you know, gritty, and like you could feel that in the film.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's like different now in like with the specific area like of Cabrini Green now is different from how it was in the 90s, very much so. And they're still able to like connect with that grittiness and that like rough feeling that you get from the original, where they're like actually like it's in the lived in area, is like really impressive, because like they make the entire like all the sets look like very worn, very very used and everything, and like that does so much. Like it's very very well done. It's I'm really impressed by the production design.
Next up is M for marketing. For marketing, I gave it a 6. I think I saw posters and things. Every once in a while, I would see a trailer that made it look just like another generic scary movie. I feel like sometimes having a subversive trailer can be good. In this case, I feel like it might have just turned people off, or maybe given people the wrong idea about what exactly they were getting into. That's about all I have to say. I think that I was more excited for the film after watching it than beforehand.
I gave it a 4 because I cannot stand those like basic movie trailers for horror movies. Yeah. With like all the same editing, all like the quick cuts and like the loud music and like I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And they had a lot of them for these. And this like that made me go into this. Whoa, she's tired.
Yeah, she's zonked right out again.
Yeah, but that made me go into this feeling like I was in store for like another kind of like generic Blumhouse horror film. But then like I was of course pleasantly surprised by like what I actually saw. Yeah. But like, you know, that made me not excited to see this really. And I think the poster I wasn't crazy about either. But like I feel like it, you know, the poster definitely played on that like, oh, you remember Candyman kind of thing, where they, like, they put Candyman front and center, whereas like the original one has like the eye with the bee on it and Candyman in the background. I thought this
is a much more provocative poster than anything that you saw before watching the new Candyman.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, especially after watching the new Candyman, I feel like there were other things they could have done that would have been so cool. It felt like a missed opportunity.
Yeah. So, you know, like it's I didn't like the marketing for this at all. So yeah, 4. You want to go on?
Yeah. For next is A for audio. I gave this a 9. Just like I did for the first one. I think it had its own themes and music, while also at times bringing back that classic like tinkly piano theme that I loved from the first one, and also taking the idea of like this overwhelming droning of bees and making it just so jarring. That's one thing I'm so glad we saw it in theaters, because of the fact, and I mean, we've got a sound system here at the house, but one thing I loved about like the stereo system there at the theater was just how like overwhelming and jarring that droning of bees was during those sequences. And I feel like the audio was like a standout for me in the original and in the remake.
Yeah. I think here I also gave it a 9. They did like wonders with like putting in the score, but then also like you were saying, putting in that droning that had like incorporated like bees and stuff into it, and like it did a really great job.
Yeah.
Doing like, you know, putting you in that atmosphere of like this kind of like this really psychological like odd horror like feeling that they get you in. They did an amazing job with that, and I really loved it. But like again, like some of the same audio issues I had with the original, where it's like it felt like more so here the ADR was like kind of bad at times. And that was a little jarring. And like I guess it's more forgiving in the 90s, where like, you know, technology wasn't as good. To hear, you'd think like you'd get a little bit better, but it wasn't, you know, too much to take away. I think because of what they did add with the soundtrack and the droning in the background, kept it from like going down more than the original. So yeah, a 9. Like they did a great job with that.
All right. Next up is S for shooting. I gave this one a 7. I think that it was still done competently. It didn't fall into the same traps of like feeling as cramped and stuff, but I think some of the cinematography didn't quite live up to the like grand standards either. Where I was saying like in the original, it had these like inspired shots, but was counterbalanced by bad shots. This did not have as many bad shots, but it also didn't have as many like standout shots for me either. It ended up falling more middle of the road. And I think the cool shots that it did have were more because of budget than because of inspiration. Shots from like outside a building that they took, I don't know, with a helicopter or a drone maybe, instead of, you know, I don't know. It didn't hit me the same.
Yeah. I gave this one an 8 for shooting. I liked it. I thought it added like an interesting scope to the film and made it feel like bigger than the original one. I thought a lot of like the cool low angle shots of Yaya walking around were really cool. I liked occasionally I liked the shots where you'd like see Candyman in the background, but most of the time it felt kind of like gimmicky and wacky. But there was the one where like what's her name? Tiona, I think is her name. Tiona walked like into the what's it called, laundromat, and she walks into the back area, and then you can see like Candyman's reflection in the door as it closes and all that. I thought it was all right. You know, I thought it was a little fun, if anything. But like it's not the exact like while I do enjoy it and think that it's like well shot and well done, it's not my preferred method. Whereas I really like that kind of like handheld gritty feeling that the original has, and like, you know, films like Black Swan and The Wrestler have, where like it feels like super like you're one of the characters, like you're in there. This one felt a little bit more detached. And like you're observing more than like, you know, being part of it. So that's why it came down to like an 8 for me as opposed to a 10 from the original.
Okay. Directing. For directing, I gave it an 8. I think that the vision here was probably just as strong, even though it took a different angle. I scored it a little bit higher though, because I kind of admired the restraint that this one had, where the original still, like I said, I don't know if it was maybe like studio involvement or what, but it kind of relied on some of those jump scares. I really liked in this one how there were some obvious jump scares that I saw a mile away that they ignored. They just straight up didn't do jump scares where I thought they were going to be. And I really appreciated that. Like the first couple times it happened, I was like, wait, that should have been a jump scare.
Yeah.
But it was very much like an intentional, like you think it's going to be a jump scare and it's not. And I liked that. Yeah. I think it was good that they kind of they held back from just making cheap jump scares and made it more about, again, the story, the folklore, things like that, to kind of enhance the movie rather than adding a bunch of cheap jumps to get the audience like laughing or screaming.
Yeah. I thought that I gave it a 7. I thought that Nina DaCosta did like a great job.
Yeah.
For like, you know, doing a modern horror remake is so hard nowadays.
Yeah.
With you know, the fans and everything, and like trying to like get like a new vision across. I think that she did a great job, like actually, you know, putting herself into this film and like, you know, making it feel like, you know, her own distinct story. And like you were saying with like how she's trying to approach it from a different angle. I really like the angle that she approached it more than the original. And I thought that that was like super well done. But then also you have moments like the moment that we laughed at in the theater where spoiler alert, I guess, again, where
I like how we keep saying I guess, but it's most definitely a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Whenever we say I guess it's a spoiler, that just means it's a spoiler.
Yeah, it's like, you know. Yeah. But moments where Tayona is like tied up in the chapel.
Yeah.
And William Burke is like giving he's like giving his like
he is monologuing hard for probably a solid like 5 minutes or something, kind of giving
good
like
amount of time. Yeah.
like we were complaining about it in the original, but in here there's kind of a weird exposition dump here.
Yeah.
Where like the antagonist, or maybe not antagonist, but one of like the bad people of the movie kind of reveals himself and talks about why he's doing the things he's doing, and he just exposition dumps on you for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then like not only does that feel like that feels like way more of a shoehorn moment than it does in the original, where they're like at dinner and they're talking about, because they're talking about it for like a reason at dinner, I guess, for like the research papers.
Yeah.
Here he just kind of like, it's like the anime villain trope where he just explains his entire plan and like talks about his powers to like the people he's fighting.
It's literally that idea of like the captive audience, where and you see it a lot with like superhero movies and stuff like that too. One of the signature things is like in The Incredibles, where he's got all the Incredibles like locked down using his powers, and he's talking about like his intent and his evil plans and stuff, and then he's like, "Oh, you sly dog, you've got me monologuing." It's literally that same thing, except without kind of the knowing, like, "Oh, you've got me monologuing." Like he has our heroine tied up, and while he's explaining his evil intent, and he's got the whole audience basically sitting there tied up, listening to his bad intent as well.
Yeah, it's super wacky, and then to top it all off, Fiona is able to get out of her like duct tape restraints.
She's
run
coincidentally tied up next to on like a pew in like an old cathedral, but the pew that she's sitting on is broken right beside where she's tied up. So she's able to just like adjust her arms a little bit and like cut her arms open.
Yeah, she had like
not her arms, her restraints.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, not the arms. Yeah, she had like a pen that she kept, and she cut through like, was it duct tape? It was something weird that she had that was like restraining her, and she cut through that, and then like just like just cut to like a wide angle, and the guy still giving his monologue, and you just see her kind of like run out of like through the doorway, and then the guy just goes, "What?"
Yeah, he's like mid sentence, he's still like actively talking about his bad ideas, and you see Tiana Paris like just turn and run out, and it's like it's not even like a well done shot, like it's just a wide shot of the cathedral, and you see her just like jump up and run away from the pew, and then it cuts back to him and he goes, "What?" And he just starts running after her, and it's like a weird moment of levity, you know. It's like it doesn't make it's probably the poorest executed like plot point and directing, like cinematography moment of the movie, but whether it was intentional or not, it was funny.
Yeah, it was.
I got
really
enjoyment
funny
out of it.
Like it felt it felt like a cartoon to an extent.
Yeah.
Like and that's like there's like smaller moments like that. That's definitely the biggest one. in this entire thing being like, you know, just this moment stands out the most, where like the directing kind of like falls apart a little bit and becomes like a little wacky, and like one of those like generic Blumhouse, this is what I would expect from like a generic Blumhouse film.
Speaking of generic Blumhouse moments, there's also a moment partway through where some like, I guess they're at their high school or something, like high school girls are in the bathroom, and they're just like talking about like the myth of Candyman, and they all like join hands in front of the big like full-length mirror in the bathroom and say Candyman together, and then they get picked off one by one in the bathroom while the others like don't even realize. Like a couple of them are like banging on the door like, hey, let us out, and one of the others like goes and investigates and gets slaughtered, and like the others like still
like a weird cycle, because like one goes over and gets slaughtered, and then the other one's like, oh,
one
no, and they go over and they get slaughtered, and another one, it's like, what?
And it's like, it's one of the most generic moments you'll see. It feels like it could have been in any horror movie ever made.
It feels like a wish upon moment.
Yeah, like, kind of.
So it's like you get moments like that. It's like you get your give and your take from Nina's directing. But I think overall she still did like a really, really impressive job.
Yeah.
Like, and encompassing everything in this like weirdly like huge wide scaled movie.
Yeah.
It's like it puts in way more than I thought it would going in.
And with that said, it's so promising.
Yeah.
She's like brand new to the scene. This was her first film, I think, like her first like feature length. She's done some other stuff, but this is like her first feature length film. And there's a lot of promise there. I'm excited to see what she does next based on what she did here. On top of that, I really like what she did with the exposition about like the past. Because it's not necessarily like I think I mentioned earlier, it's not like a reboot necessarily so much as like a revitalization
and like a sequel in a way.
Yeah, it definitely plays on the mythology of the past movies, like they actually happened.
She did her homework, like going into this film, and I love that. There's
this really fantastic like papercraft look where it's like silhouetted. And you can actually see the hands like manipulating these like papercraft silhouettes, explaining like the past and stuff during exposition, so that it not necessarily during some of the worst moments like in the chapel, but there are a lot of moments where when they're doing exposition, it kind of flashes to this like papercraft silhouette style that was really cool and did enhance the movie. I think there was a lot of really really cool stuff visually. I was really happy watching it.
Yeah, and like me and my girlfriend were talking about this before. Like, you can tell when a director has not like fully put themselves in like the story that they're trying to like portray on the screen, and like what they're like, you know, like they haven't done their homework, I guess. Like I was just saying, she has definitely done her homework and like looked at all the tie-ins that she makes in this from like the original. It's honestly impressive, and like it didn't feel cheap in any way. It felt like she actually cared, and I like that a lot. Like she did what she went out to do, and I'm really impressed by her. Yeah.
All right, so next we have editing for your E for editing.
Editing.
For editing, I gave it a 7 as well. More or less the same problem I had with the previous one, where I think like editors' jobs are easier or harder based on how effectively everyone else did their jobs. And I think that some of the lesser performances in this movie, from the acting and the script writing and the cinematography, the editor wasn't able to always disguise that. So I think what was done well was done well, but there were certain moments like the bathroom scene and stuff like that where I'm like, oh, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Not just the scene itself, but even the way it was shot. It was like, okay, like can we just, you know, do a little bit more with this instead of having like the awkward shot like under the stall door of the floating feet and stuff? Can we have either something more subtle or more in your face, like instead of taking these like half steps?
Yeah. I also gave this one a 7. I think that it does better than the original does, because like it doesn't have all those like jarring cuts.
Yeah.
Where it feels like it kind of takes you out of like whatever mood you're in at the moment. But I think that it has like you said, those moments where it feels kind of like cliche-ish with the horror, like the moment where Yahya Abdul is like he's in the elevator and it like the lights cut out and you see like the reflection of Candyman on the ceiling and it gets like all these like these tropey kind of like sounds and stuff put into it. That felt like way too stereotypical in a way. Way too cliche, and I didn't like that. And like the bathroom scene also felt cliche. I didn't really like the thought of Candyman, like you only really see him in reflections. Like I get what they were doing there, but like that I felt like that also took away from the character of Candyman again. One of those things where you couldn't connect with him in any way. Because like in the first one you feel like emotionally connected to Tony Todd because like he's been through these like this terrible moment and what he wants is like his true love and all that. But here it's just like, you know, there's some dude in a mirror. Like it's not as much.
Well, and even before, like in the original, you know, it's much more emotional. And in here, like the mythology tries to kind of explain the Candyman over the years and like how it started and stuff like that. But also, at least until the end, the Candyman is basically portrayed as like a creeper.
Yeah.
Like he's literally like hiding in the walls in one of the projects like in one of the walls in Cabrini Green, like, and he'll just like pop out and give people candy and like hope that they take it. But you know, like if it's some people, he's like it's regular candy, and some people he gives them like candy with razors in it.
No, that was like it was like they thought he was the one that gave him like candy with razor blades, but it wasn't actually him. It was someone else.
He just happened to be creepy enough that people assumed it was him.
Like it's like, oh well, it's got to be the guy that just like hands out candy to kids randomly with one hand.
And I mean,
it does feel weird that they tried to make him like this sympathetic character. Where it's like we understand that he had no bad intentions and that he was just trying to be a nice guy that gave out candy. But it's hard to connect with someone that just does give off like the creepy vibes like that.
They play it off as like a racial injustice thing. They play it off like, you know, he was just a nice guy who gave out candy and he was taken down because of race. And the sentiment I think is the sentiment behind it about the unfair treatment is a good message. About how we treat people and especially how like police treat people and stuff like that. But at the same time, watching the movie, they literally make him like a creeper that lives in the walls of a building, and he comes out with like this big old like stump hand with like a hook and all this, and
like a handful of candy.
And a handful of like dirty candy that's like half unwrapped. And he's humming to himself, and he's got this big old smile on his face. And he won't say words. Like, he just kind of sits there, like, staring with this big smile at little kids, trying to give them, like, this dirty, half-unwrapped candy after sneaking out of the walls of a building. So, you know...
again, the sentiment makes sense. It's a really, really important sentiment to, like, get across in film and talk about. But the characters like makes no sense as to why you'd like root for that guy. Like he's just so I don't know. It felt way more effective in the original. But that's a whole other topic for that. We just had to talk about like the character a little bit more, I guess. But so 7 for that.
7, and finally R for reflection. Kind of despite some of the complaints I made and with some of the praises I gave it, I gave this movie an 8. I definitely enjoyed it. I think a little bit more than the original because of some of the positive benefits of a bigger script and the acting behind it. But I gave this movie an 8.
This one I gave a 6. I forgot to change the scene. This one I gave it 6, and I'm not like I'm so torn between like a 6 and a 7. And I think it's like because of those little things that I do have that I really like prefer with like the shooting style and like the like certain parts of like the vision where like as with Nina DaCosta, she's like way more locked off and like you know, like standard in a way with how she wants to like portray it, like what's on screen. But like with Bernard Rose, he like puts the camera in like a swirling motion and like has a lot of movement in that.
Yeah.
I think that like, you know, adds a lot more to the enjoyment and like putting me into the film. So that's why I would give like the original a 7 and this one like a 6. I thought about giving it a 6.5, but that would be like confusing. So I just gave it a 6.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm leaning towards right now. Who knows? In a couple of days, it might be different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for now it's 6, and my overall score comes out to again a 70. So
Really?
like, yeah.
So my overall for this one came out to a 76.
Nice.
Which is only 7 points higher than the original. They're still very close, but I'm kind of surprised that yours came out even across the board for both movies.
Yeah, like I'm really genuinely surprised about how much I enjoyed this film.
Yeah.
Like I did not think, by the marketing, again, I gave it a 4 for a reason. Did not think it was going to be like as enjoyable as it was. I think Jordan Peele's writing does a great job in like, you know, making it more accessible, and the comedy that he does put in actually works really well.
Yeah.
I think that's funny. Like he's a funny guy. Come on, but he also like writes horror well. And you know, like I think that lends a lot to this film and like makes me enjoy it more than most like horror movie remakes.
Yeah.
Like the 2019 Black Christmas.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah.
But yeah, so that's
great. It's a good film.
Yeah, they both were. You can't really go wrong with either one.
No.
So that was our deep dive into the original Candyman and the remake of Candyman. We did not do WAP Masters or really take into consideration the sequels.
No.
Not nearly as well made as either one of these. So we just kind of focused on the primary entries for the Candyman.
Yeah.
We haven't really decided, I don't think, on next week's primary topic as far as a movie that we're gonna watch. But
yeah, we have.
Is Malignant this week?
Yeah, it comes out on the 10th.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So next week we'll be diving into Malignant, the next horror film by James Wan.
And maybe we'll like take a look at some of his other films. Like,
yeah. We'll probably talk about some of his other films. I don't know if we'll do a full retrospective because he's been doing this long enough that's a lot of skin in the game to get through.
And we kind of like learned our lesson because we watched what was it like we watched 12 films in 2 weeks from like 2 specific directors, and then neither of those episodes worked out. So, you know, we're trying to like make it work better.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Malignant, and we might end up doing like a WAP Master on our favorites of his filmography or something like that. We still have to iron out the details for that, but join us next week to hear us talk about James Wan and his filmography, and especially his new film Malignant. As well as we'll be covering our top musical scores. And until then, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.